do you want? I want the throne.
Hey, you, the tuna.
Y'all sitting up here comfortable. Must feel good. It's about 2 billion people all over the world that looks like us, but their lives are a lot harder. Wakanda has the tools to liberate them all.
And what tools are those?
Vibranium. Your weapons.
Our weapons will not be used to wage war on the world. It is not our way to be judge, jury, and executioner for people who are not our own.
Not your own. But didn't life start right here on this continent? So ain't all people your people?
I am not king of all people. I am king of Wakanda. And it is my responsibility to make sure our people are safe and that vibranium does not fall into the hands of a person like you.
Son, we have entertained the charlatan for too long. Reject his request.
Oh, I ain't requesting nothing. Ask who I am.
You're Eric Stevens, an American black operative, a mercenary nicknamed Killmonger. That's who you are.
That's not my name, princess. Ask me, king.
No.
Ask me.
Take him away.
Ungubani, Indigo Intadaka, Unyanaka Njogu.
Huh? Unyanaka
I found my daddy with Panther claws in his chest. You ain't the son of a king, you are the son of a murderer.
We have to see something. Lies.
I'm afraid not, Queen Mother.
You in that Togancho.
Hey, Auntie. I'm exercising my blood right. The challenge for the mantles of King and Black Panther.
Do not do this, T'Challa.
As the son of Prince Njobu, he is within his rights.
He has no rights here. The challenge will take weeks to prepare.
Weeks? I don't need weeks. The whole country ain't gotta be there. I just need him and somebody to get me out of these chains.
Okay, now people, now let's go ahead and get into a little topic, a little discussion about the Indigenous American versus the Pan-African whole thing. Man, it's been, it's a big discussion. It seems to be like some sort of little rivalry going on, in the Black community. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, both sides really have substantial evidence and great claims. You feel me? Like, I researched both of them, and both of them have really good points, very good arguments. Now, not all so-called Black Americans are Aboriginal to America, just as all so-called Black Americans are not from Africa. America is a huge melting pot full of different ethnicities and nationalities, and it's been that way since even before Columbus. Now let's weigh in on a few factors. Now, you hear a lot of people saying like, well, my DNA test says that I'm this and that, and they rely on these DNA tests. Well, DNA testing has been admitted and proven to be false. It's a fraud. You can look this up. Many people who study in the field will tell you there's no way of them figuring out that. So it's false. DNA testing is useless. We can't use it. It's made up. And also, in these discussions, you hear a lot of people saying like, oh, well, this artifact is 50,000 years old, or these pyramids are 100,000 years old. No, carbon dating is just a theory. It was never proven, and it's since been also debunked by many countless scientists. I mean, you can also look this up. No one uses carbon dating, so we can't use it. The out of Africa theory was also just what it was, a theory. It's never been proven. So that now leaves us with oral history, archaeology, and common sense. Science has been written out, so now we just have oral history, you know, which is like stories and things that have been passed down from generation to generation, told to us or written down. We have archaeology, which, you know, like findings that prove things like paintings, drawings. And we have deep logic, aka common sense. Now, a lot of people like to, you know, just like hop on the bandwagon, like I'm Indigenous American, I'm Indian, this and that. Well, like my 2 times great grandmother was stated and known to be Indian. She was buried with feathers in her hair and was always known to wear 'em. And you know, she was said that, like, you know how a lot of our older people say when when they mention their grandmothers, you know, it was like she was Indian from such and such tribe, and she had the long pretty hair down her back and high cheekbones. Like, that was my 2 times great grandmother. And a lot of people in my family have inherited those traits. A lot of people in my family have silky, wavy, long black hair and are copper colored to fair skin. A lot of people in my family, we seem to have inherited that. So, yes, many of us are in fact Indians or Aboriginal to Americans, but there's also many Africans who are coming here before Columbus that mingled with the natives, you know, adopted each other's customs and became what we now call Black Indians. You know, a lot of them were adopted into the tribe. Saying you aren't from Africa could really just depend on how far back you want to go. Really. We all originated from somewhere. How many generations do you have to be out of Africa to no longer be considered one? Can anybody answer that? Because that'll put away with all of that right there. You do have a rightful claim to say that you aren't African, technically, also. So, you know, like, who has the rightful claim to claim the term indigenous? If there were Africans coming here, who knows how long before Columbus, then wouldn't that now make them also indigenous Americans? They've been here for thousands of years, so, you know, like, wouldn't that make them indigenous also? How long do you have to be here to be considered indigenous or Aboriginal? Another question that you won't hear like a lot of people talk about. Why are there so many yellow or high yellow, copper skinned, straight haired Indians than there are extremely curly haired ones in all the Americas? Question, you know, you won't hear a lot of people touch on that. Some of us have been here. Some of us came from the Pacific Islands, and some of us came from Africa. You know, you gotta look at all 3 sides of the map. And another thing I want to talk about, like, you got a lot of people that's really just hopping on the Indigenous American bandwagon and don't know anything. They're trying to infiltrate and man, just like spread like they pagan ideologies like to our people. You know, they'll say things like, I heard people say things like, well, you know, us Aboriginal Americans, we didn't believe in God and we just did this and that. No, please stop it. Stop it, please. You'll hear many chiefs say in ancient times they all believed in God. You know, right here in the Americas. You got you know, the Arawak Nation, you know, their creator name is Yaya. They say he had a son named Yael, I think, and whose symbol was a fish, ironically. You know, the word for father is Baba, which also resembles Abba, which is like one of the Hebrew names for God. You have the Choctaws, whose name for God is Abba. You know, that's Hebrew name for God. I mean, people, come on, like, what do you think we is all doing? A bunch of hocus pocus spells and stuff? Come on. It was times here in the Americas where the prophets and the holy people would accuse, kill, and run people accused of witchcraft and sorcery off of the land. They would burn them, run them off the land, and anything if you were accused of doing that type of stuff. So, people, come on, do your research. Now, here you have a lot of people who say like, there wasn't no Africans that came here. The story was made up. Now, maybe the number of African slaves that came here might have been over exaggerated, but there still was a whole lot coming here, as you see. 200 slaves coming from Gold Coast. You see it right here. Another 200 right here, Gold Coast. You know, a lot of people ask you, like, where are the documents? You can look up the documents. Like, it's not hard to find. They'll ask, where are the slave ships? You can find these documents if you want to look them up. It's thousands of ships that are, on the ocean floor. Some of them has been excavated by now, and some of them haven't. You can a lot of the slave ships were remodeled for other uses, like cargo ships were made for just whatever, like, what do you think they did with the ships after slavery was outlawed and they finally stopped bringing in slaves? They reused the ships for other things. Like, come on, you can find this information, people. Y'all just don't want to find it. Now, if you look here, America is surrounded. There isn't just one side. Like, America is surrounded on three sides. Through research and migrations in history, we have three main groups of people who claim to be Native or Indigenous Aboriginal Americans. We have Mongoloids, who come from the Northeast Asia migration. You have the Pacific Islanders, Southeast Asian, people who come from Polynesia and, Southeast Asia took this migration route. And you also have the Bantus, which is West Africa. They say slaves from Africa predominantly were from the West Coast. Well, the group that dominates the West Coast of Africa are the Bantu people, aka the Niger Congo B linguistic group people. Now, here's a description of what majority American Indians look like. Straight haired ones. They're from the Mongoloid migration. You can look at their phenotypes right here clearly and see. They crossed the Bering Strait into the Americas. Here you have Pacific Islanders who come from Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia, and the whole Southeast Asia, excuse me. And, look at these people. They really look a whole lot like us. We resemble them more than any other group of people in the world. And they're just to the west of the Americas. So we're going to get into this a little bit later. But here you have a description of the Bantus, who dominate the west coast of Africa, where, a lot of African slaves were taken from. You know, look at the phenotypes. You know, you see a few of the so-called Black Americans actually look like Africans, but many of us don't. Now, this is also what I want to get into now. In the indigenous community, like you'll see a lot of these comparison pictures, like people stop it. Like this is crazy. Like now, when they do stuff like this, like this is when like you really reaching. You're really reaching far. Like you got a picture of James Brown and a Native American. You got Booker T, the wrestler, in comparison to a Native American, and you got Nelly with a comparison. Like, yes, their phenotypes look alike. I can find a white person somewhere in the world who looks exactly like me. That doesn't mean that I'm from them. Clearly, their hair is very different. Naturally straight, silky hair. James Brown hair is perms. You can't see it in this picture, but you know, the hair textures are very different, you know, indicating that although these people look the same, they're not the same. Come on, people. You'll hear a lot of people, you know, say, the thing with the Olmecs. They say, well, some people say the Olmecs came from Africa. Some people say the Olmecs were always here. Some people say the Olmecs came from Pacific Islands. Well, I doubt the Olmecs came from Africa because technically the Olmecs, if you look at the sculptures, they really don't look anything like Africans. If anything, they look closer to the indigenous people of Fiji Islands, you know, Hawaii, you know, Pacific Islanders, you know, they resemble them. And things like this, man, like, come on, like, this dude is from Puppet Master. You know, that little screw on his head, he would like impale people and kill them. They'll try to say that Puppet Master stole this from this Peru artifact. Like this is clearly just some sort of a pointy helmet on his head. I highly doubt he used it to impale and kill people like this dude from the Puppet Master. Like, come on, people, stop. Goodness. Let's do some more comparison. Some more comparisons, excuse me. Let's do the guessing game. Who is from where? Where is this lady from? Where is this lady from? Where is this lady from? Where is he from? Where are they from? Where they're from? And who looks alike? This is a American, aka a black woman. This is a Pacific Islander. This is a West African. This again is a black woman here in America. Another Pacific Islander, another West African. Of a Pacific Islander from the Fiji Islands, a Black American, a West African. Now in this picture, who do we resemble more? Like I told you earlier, we strongly resemble more Pacific Islanders. We pretty much almost look damn near identical, especially if you look at this. We pretty much look identical to them. We don't look much like West Africans. So when the indigenous community says that, like, okay, well, that's that's pretty right on. Now, let's get into something. If you notice with a lot of Black Americans, Black people here, if you look at our hair, I'll say about 70% of us have hair that looks similar to this. We grow afros and our hair, you know, it kind of has like a silky sort of texture if you look at it. And around our edges, we have like, you know, it's silky, you know, it's very fine silky hair. You know, some people call it baby hair, you know, as you could say. Look at the texture of their hair and tell me that it doesn't strongly resemble the texture of most of our hair here. These are Black Americans, Black people here. And these people are Black. They're not mixed with anything as far back as I can tell, because some of these people are actually my own family members in this picture. You know, most of our hair looks like this. It's long and black and kind of wavy looking, if you see. Silky, like wavy looking. Around the edges, we have a lot of like silky hair. Now this is common hair of Black Americans. This is common hair of West Africans. It's their hair is thicker, sort of a little bit more dry looking, and if you look around the edges, is nowhere near the same as ours. Our hair is like very silky or have a lot of baby hair around the edges, and you won't typically see that in West Africans. Just another indicator that we're more than likely, most of us aren't from West Africa. Here's a comparison. You have typical Black American hair and typical West African hair. There is a difference. Now, another thing that I want to point out of who we more closely resemble is in a lot of Pacific Islanders, you'll notice a lot of children have reddish or blondish hair. You see? Now, West Africans don't have reddish or blondish hair. Pacific Islanders do, West Africans don't. But you know who does? Who also does have? What other group of people also have reddish and blondish hair? Black Americans. You see this a lot in Black Americans. Also with moles. You'll see a lot of Black Americans with reddish or blondish hair. And in a lot of Pacific Islanders, that have reddish or blondish hair, as they get older and, grow to become an adult, the color will grow out, their hair will become black. Well, I can remember when I was like 11, 12, when I used to go out in the sun, my auntie used to tell me, boy, you got sandy brown hair. Like my hair would kind of take like a sandy brownish color sometimes, especially when I was younger. My auntie pointed this out to me. And I even used to notice, but as I got older, it took more of a black tone. So, just another indicator, who do we really come from? Are we really from West Africa, or are we from the other side, Pacific Islands? Here you have the typical people, older people who claim that they're Indian, or claim to be Aboriginal Americans. This is typically what we look like. Many people in my family who I told you, like my 2 times great grandmother was a known Indian with long black hair. This is typically what we look like. Right here. Now, for the Pan-African thing, like here you have Pangea, once all the continents were connected together. So, once all the continents were connected together, and also you have every nation, every culture has a great flood story. You name it, everywhere in the world, somebody has a great flood story where the whole world was destroyed by a flood and only a few people survive. Then you have the continental drift, where they say this is how it happened. The tectonic plates, they drifted apart, and this is how it happened. Also, you have, according to the Bible and other sources, of the most notable great flood story of Noah's Ark, they landed right here. And if you look, this is pretty much right in the middle. You have Europe to the north, Africa to the west, and the so-called Middle East and Asia to the east. Now you're here like, man, the Pan-African is like, oh goodness, these people, man. Africa is sitting just barely on the African tectonic plate. Like, if you look at the tectonic plates, like right here. So like a lot of people that claim, they'll claim the whole continent of Africa. Like, they don't know exactly where in Africa we originated from, so they'll just claim the whole continent. There's no way of knowing that. We've already like said that, like, science is being written out because carbon dating is useless and DNA testing is useless. So what do you have now? There's no way of proving that. Technically, by default, after the Great Flood, Noah's Ark landed right here, where his family, his sons, migrated out into different waves and repopulated the earth. So technically, by default, we all originate as far back as we can go back right here. Now, does this mean that we're all technically from Africa? Depends on how you want to look at it, because technically this would be the so-called Middle East, which was only named the Middle East by the British, might I add. But this is still like sitting pretty much on the African tectonic plate. Excuse me if I got that wrong earlier, but so technically we're from here. It just depends on how far back you want to go. So yeah, so that's pretty much about it, people. Like, I just wanted to point out those few things that a lot of people don't take in the hand. So like, if you're African, be proud to be from Africa. If you're American, be proud to be from America. You don't have to fake or hop on any bandwagon. You feel me? Like, and another thing about the Pan-Africanists, like, y'all are so quick to claim y'all from Africa. Like, y'all don't have like not one single family member or any story that was passed down saying that y'all were from there or anything. And yet you just want to, I don't know why it is that y'all worship, or the fascination it is that y'all have with Africans. Most of them, on the larger scale, do not think highly of Black Americans. And for another thing, like, I'm not sure how well you all know your history, but those West Africans sold you. So technically, if you're here in America and you're claiming that you're African, one of the Africans that came over here as slaves, then you were sold. Your family, your village was destroyed, women raped, and sold.
Bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from ships, because they knew death was better than bondage.